Hare Krishna. Okay. Thank you. So welcome everyone. We'll be having a Bhagavad-gita class now. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Praje Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanande. Hari Bol. So thank you all for coming to the Bhagavad-gita class today. We have this class every single day to try to share this knowledge of Bhagavad-gita. Who here has heard of Bhagavad-gita before? Nice, awesome. So who has read some of the Bhagavad-gita? A little bit. Good. Who's read all of it? No, okay, cool. So everyone's heard of it, been somewhat, little bit familiar. So we'll try to go a little bit into this book. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading. You can come sit closer if you want. So we're reading Bhagavad-gita chapter 1, verse 11. The chapter is called Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. So the verse is on the screen here. I don't know if anybody can move that down, but we can all recite the verse. I'll recite and then you can recite line by line. Ayaneshu cha sarveshu yata bhagam avastitaha bhishmam eva birakshantu bhavanta sarva eva hi ayaneshu cha sarveshu yata bhagam avastitaha bhishmam eva birakshantu bhavanta sarva eva hi ayaneshu cha sarveshu yata bhagam avastitaha bhishmam eva birakshantu bhavanta sarva eva hi. So does anyone want to try reciting? Ayaneshu cha sarveshu yata bhagam avastitaha bhishmam eva birakshantu bhavanta sarva eva hi ayaneshu cha sarveshu yata bhagam avastitaha bhishmam eva birakshantu bhavanta sarva eva hi. Anyone else? Okay, we'll go to the word for word. Ayaneshu. in the strategic points. Cha, also. Sarveshu, everywhere. Yata bhagam, as differently arranged. Avastitaha, situated. Bhishmam, unto grandfather Bhishma. Eva, certainly. Abhirakshantu, should give support. Bhavanta, you. Sarve, all respectively. Evahi, certainly. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All of you must now give full support to Grandfather Bhishma as you stand at your respective strategic points of entrance into the phalanx of the army. Purport. Duryodhana, after praising the prowess of Bhishma, further considered that others might think that they had been considered less important. So in his usual diplomatic way, he tried to adjust the situation in the above words. He emphasized that Bhishma Dev was undoubtedly the greatest hero, but he was an old man, so everyone must especially think of his protection from all sides. He might become engaged in the fight, and the enemy might take advantage of his full engagement on one side. Therefore, it was important that other heroes not leave their strategic positions and allow the enemy to break the phalanx. Duryodhana clearly felt that the victory of the Kurus depended on the presence of Bhishma Dev. He was confident of the full support of Bhishma Dev and Dronacharya in the battle because he well knew that they did not even speak a word when Arjuna's wife Draupadi, in her helpless condition, had appealed to them for justice while she was being forced to appear naked in the presence of all the great generals in the assembly. Although he knew that the two generals had some sort of affection for the Pandavas, he hoped that these generals would now completely give it up as they had done during the gambling performances. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchatatvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhakta Vataram Bhakta Kyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Kadambakanana Swami Niti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Guru Dasa Jayadvaita Swami Niti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pasatyadeshatarine. Hare Krishna. Thank you all so much for coming to Bhagavad-gita class today. So, in the context of where we're at in Bhagavad-gita, we're right at the beginning. Who here has read or watched Mahabharata TV shows when they were growing up? So then you probably know more than me about Mahabharata. But we'll just touch on where we're at now. So the Mahabharata is a very vast scripture with many stories of all kinds of moral dilemmas, political intrigue, and so many pastimes of Krishna and his devotees and what they go through in terms of their family life and war. And so at this point, the Bhagavad-gita was spoken in one of the parts of Mahabharata where it's just before the battle of Kurukshetra is meant to happen. So the reason for this battle is that there's a family, the Kuru dynasty. They're the same family. But unfortunately, there's some rivalry between the members of this family. There's two brothers, Dhritarashtra and Pandu. And Dhritarashtra's sons are sinful, and Pandu's sons are righteous. So it's like they're representing good and evil in some way. And naturally, the ones who are not qualified to take the leadership, which are the evil sons, they want the leadership. And the obvious candidate for the leadership is the pious, the righteous. So Yudhishthir is meant to become the king, but who is the son of Pandu. But Dhritarashtra's sons want to take over the kingdom, Duryodhana and others. So they devise many schemes to try to take over the kingdom. Now they had an illegal gambling match where they cheated the Pandavas from their kingdom and took all their property, even their own selves. And then they exiled the Pandavas to the forest for 12 years. They tried to set fire to the house the Pandavas were in. They performed so many atrocious acts towards the Pandavas. And one such act which is mentioned here is when they tried to disrobe Draupadi, the wife of the Pandavas, in front of everyone. And so they're now trying to take over the kingdom, and no matter what type of truce or reconciliation the Pandavas tried to have, where they'd share the kingdom or they'd try to cooperate in some way, the Kauravas refused. They wanted everything, and then that's how this battle of Kurukshetra is about to begin with the speech. So this is at the beginning of Bhagavad-gita. Dhritarashtra, who's the father of Duryodhana, he's actually blind. So he doesn't know what's going on. He's at his home, and he's asking Sanjaya to tell him what is happening on the battlefield. And Sanjaya, he's kind of like the old school Facebook live stream that we have now. Because he's in Hastinapur, but he has divine vision of what's happening on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So it's kind of like the power we wish we could all have, where I'd really like to be at a few festivals that I'm not going to be at. I'd really like to have that divine vision of what's going on there. But Sanjaya had this divine vision of the battle of Kurukshetra. And he was telling Dhritarashtra what's happening. So the beginning, Bhagavad Gita starts with him, Dhritarashtra asking, what is happening? What's my son doing? And Sanjaya is telling him all the conversation that's going on. So this verse that we read is actually the last verse of Duryodhana speaking. In the verses before, he's speaking all about the prowess of the different armies. So he's looking at both sides before the war, and he's commenting on the Pandavas' army and our army. And he's trying to compare and see who's superior in some way. And it's an interesting point here because Duryodhana is actually quite expert at being diplomatic. This is something all people who are doing any kind of management or leadership would really like to learn, because he is simultaneously keeping his team motivated, glorified. He's glorifying them, he's appreciating them, valuing them, and he's trying to encourage them in battle. But at the same time, he is also keeping them quite realistic by not allowing them to become complacent, because that's what you want. You don't want your team to become overconfident and think that they couldn't. So he's talking about the prowess of the Pandavas and then also about their own prowess. But for him, their team is going to win. They are superior. And that's why he's always reassuring them, like, don't worry. He's encouraging them, like, our team is the strongest. And an interesting point is that he's also making everybody feel equally valued, even though in the previous verse he's talking about Bhishma Dev and how, he's really the greatest hero. He's the greatest warrior, and he's the reason we're going to win. But in this verse, it says how he was, in a diplomatic way, also trying to appreciate everybody for their contribution. He's saying that every role, whatever you're doing, it carries an equal importance. It's like in any kind of sport, there's like in football, there's a goalkeeper, but it's not that only the goalkeeper is important. It's all the other players contribute. So he was trying to, in a diplomatic way, make everyone feel included. And it's interesting because he's trying to have the right balance of the negative feedback and encouragement, which is something that we all need in our leadership skills. That's actually something we can learn from Duryodhana. Even the sinful can teach us something. And so you need a right balance. Even in our lives, we notice if somebody is giving us too much critical feedback, it can discourage us and demotivate us. And if somebody is giving us too much encouragement and they're never telling us where we're wrong, then we don't look out for the problems. We don't grow from the experience. So both of those are needed. And in this way, Duryodhana is quite expert in his speaking. But another thing we learn is that being an expert speaker is not enough. You need to have pure intentions. So even though Duryodhana is very good at trying to convince them that what they're doing is right and they're going to win, because his intention in his heart is sinful, it's to defeat, it's to usurp the kingdom, and to ultimately not work for the benefit of everyone. It's for his own benefit. And we know that in leadership, you always want the greatest leader, because that person will look for the benefit of everyone else. A strong leader is not selfish. They're fully selfless. They'll always be working for the benefit of the citizens, even at their own expense. Now, this is something that Yudhishthir had, but Duryodhana did not have. So even though he's trying to speak very nicely, it's actually his character that's more important. And it's a lesson for us in real life that when we're having any dealings with anybody, for us to look out for them and for ourselves, that our character is more important than what we're saying or our skills or whatever expertise we seem to have. What's inside is more important. And in this verse specifically, he's speaking about grandfather Bhishma Dev, who is the greatest, but he's still telling the other people in the battle to protect Bhishma Dev. He's saying that even though Bhishma Dev is the greatest, we don't want anything to break the phalanx. We need him to be protected on all sides at all times. We shouldn't think just because he's the greatest that nobody can harm him, because everybody has some vulnerability. And as soon as you let your guard down, then and it can cost us the battle. And that's a really important lesson for us in our life also, especially in our spiritual lives. Because as soon as we let our guard down, that's giving a little crack for Maya to enter, for material desires to enter into our spiritual life. I remember I had this experience at home one day where I woke up one morning and the house was totally flooded. And I was so confused, and we found out that there was a little pipe, this small crack in a pipe in our bathroom. And I thought it must have been, flooding for the whole night, because it's like up to here for the whole house. But my brother had told me actually he just went to the bathroom 5 minutes before and there was nothing. So that means within a few minutes, this tiny crack in the pipe had the power to flood our entire house. So that's how strong Maya is, the material energy. Where if you give a small crack, if you leave a small opening, the whole place can be flooded. So that means if we give any kind of allowance for material desires, material thoughts, sense gratification, any sinful inclinations, then it can actually overpower us and take over our whole life. We think maybe it's a small thing. I can be a little bit slack. I don't have to try so hard all the time. But that's actually just the material energy trying to trick us and make us not be so alert. And then once we're not alert, that's when the attack comes. So that's what we can learn. And it said that actually just as Bhishma is protecting, he's the main protector, but he also needs to be protected. So for us in our spiritual life, our intelligence is what's protecting us. Because in Bhagavad-gita, it's described that higher than the senses is the mind, and higher than the mind is the intelligence. So if you have strong intelligence, then your senses are controlled. But if the intelligence is weak, then there's nothing directing the mind, and then the senses are going to be going all over the place and trying to entangle us in all kinds of things. So the intelligence has to be well protected, and then the senses will be controlled. But how do we protect the intelligence? It said that we need to be very rigorously reading the scriptures and performing our spiritual activities, our sadhana, so that whatever our spiritual practice is, we should be very dedicated in it. For us, it's chanting the holy name, reading the scripture, taking the association of saintly people, visiting the temple, worshipping the deity in some way, so that we can keep our intelligence strong. There's this verse in Bhagavad-gita that describes what happens when we succumb to temptation, when we allow our intelligence to be exposed to temptation. Dhyayato vishayan pumsa, sangaste supajayate, sangat sanjayate kama, kamat krodho bijayate. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops. And from lust, anger arises. Krodhat bhavati sammoha, sammohat smriti vibrama, smriti brahmsad buddhinaso, buddhinasad pranasyati. From anger, complete delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. So it's saying that when we contemplate the objects of the senses, that means when we're allowing our senses to think and meditate on temptation, any kind of temptation that comes, this is the result. This is the natural progression that will happen. We'll develop attachment. Then lust will come for whatever we're contemplating. Then anger, when we don't receive what we're lusting after. And then after that, that's when delusion, bewilderment, and then intelligence is lost. So to prevent that whole thing from happening, that fall down, is protect our intelligence from temptation, and also keep the intelligence strong with scriptural study. Another point in this verse that we can, actually just this whole beginning of Bhagavad-gita, is that Duryodhana was assessing the situation with material vision. So he was looking at both armies and seeing that their army has greater strength because of Bhishma Dev, and therefore they're going to win. But he failed to notice that Krishna is on the Pandava side. And because Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's actually stronger than all. Krishna is stronger than the strongest. But because he didn't accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because he was only seeing him with material vision, so he actually didn't include Krishna in his estimation of what's happening in the fight. And also Krishna, it's understandable because Krishna had vowed not to fight in this battle. But still, he was on the side of the Pandavas. And the reason he was on their side was because they were righteous. They were the people who were working for good. They were the devotees. And in Bhagavad-gita, Krishna says that he comes to protect his devotees. Paritranaya sadhunam vinachaya cha duskritam dharma samsarpanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Krishna says to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants. as well as to reestablish the principles of religion, I appear millennium after millennium. So this is Krishna's purpose in appearing. It's to basically kill the sinful and to protect the devotees. And because the Pandavas are his greatest devotees, so naturally he's on their side, and that means that they cannot actually be destroyed because they're fully protected by Krishna. And that's something that Duryodhana didn't take into consideration because of his material vision and not accepting Krishna as the supreme person. So this led into this point I was thinking of about external confidence. Duryodhana here in this verse it says that he is confident of their victory. And he only has this confidence because of his external vision, because of his external estimation of their strength. It's not from anything deeper within. And I was thinking about how sometimes we do this ourselves in our life. We have some kind of external confidence that's not based on anything deep. It's just on the outside. And it was reminding me of what Bhaktivedanta Prabhu was saying in the class on Sunday morning. If anybody didn't listen to it, please get the recording and listen, because it was amazing. But he was speaking about how sometimes when we're in the mode of passion, then we get very quick results, because that is characteristic of the mode of passion. It's something that appears like nectar at the beginning and poison at the end. So we may be doing something and thinking, I'm getting lots of good, quick results, and we think we're successful. And sometimes also when we have this kind of external confidence, like Duryodhana, it's because we're getting quick results, or something appears to be very positive for us. And what he was saying in the class on Sunday was that the mode of passion looks better than it is. And that's what Duryodhana was experiencing here, where he's looking at the army and it's looking better than it is. And then he said that the mode of, Bhaktivedanta Prabhu said that the mode of goodness is better than it looks. Because the mode of goodness can sometimes look very difficult initially. And it's characterized by being poison at the beginning and nectar at the end. So at the beginning, something could look really difficult and bad, but that's actually the right path, the righteous path. So when I was reflecting on this point of having external confidence in anything, it's usually related to the mode of passion. It doesn't actually sustain. And that's what we see here with Duryodhana. And I was trying to apply this to our spiritual lives. Sometimes we also can experience this in our spiritual lives, where we have some kind of overconfidence or external confidence. But the only true confidence we can have is based on faith in Krishna. It's based on what he says. It's based on following his instructions. And then we can have real, lasting, internal confidence that has depth behind it. That's why we have this example of Arjuna, who was actually initially bewildered in Bhagavad-gita. At first, he was in confusion. But because he trusted Krishna and had faith in Krishna and followed his direction, whatever Krishna said, then he could have actual real confidence in the end. He could have confidence based on actual depth as opposed to just a show, an external show of confidence. So that was my main thoughts about this verse that we read. Are there any questions or points for discussion so far? Yes? Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki jai, Shri Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai, Shri Shri Gaurnitai ki jai. When you say you try to follow everything, do you mean, what do you mean by that? For you. That's such an interesting question. Like, how do we know what is the right thing to do and the right guidance to take in one sense? So we have a directive that whatever we do should be backed up by Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So whatever's in the scripture is meant to be followed. But Shastra means scripture. So whatever's in the Shastra, the scripture, is meant to be followed. But sometimes we don't know how to follow the scripture because we cannot relate it to our life in some way. So that's why we need Guru and Sadhus. Guru means spiritual master. A spiritual master is someone who guides us on what is the right path to follow for us. It's personal. It's how to apply the scripture in our life personally, such that we can benefit the most for our circumstances. And sadhus, that's the saintly personalities around, they should also be in agreement with it, because they're also following the scripture. So anyone that has good understanding of the scripture will be the sadhus and the guru. So all those three should be aligned. That's an interesting point. Actually, everybody, in some way, we don't know it, but we all have a guru that we're following. Sometimes we think we're just following our own, we're doing what we want, but really, sometimes it's just our mind that's the guru. One of my teachers, Jayadvaita Swami, said that one whose mind is their guru has a fool for a disciple. That means if we're only following our mind, we're actually a fool, because the mind can be, materially motivated, can be contaminated and dictated to by the senses, and maybe completely uncontrolled and just be following what the senses want. So everybody is listening to someone. We're either listening to our mind or bad influences, or we're listening to good influences. So in our spiritual path, generally, if we've chosen to take up a spiritual path, generally we're under some guidance. It may not be a formal guru, like a formal teacher, but we're taking guidance from someone. Something has brought us to this point where we're reading the Bhagavad-gita. If we have no one, it's Prabhupada, because he gave us these books. He's translated and commented on all the books we have here, Bhagavad-gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. So if we feel we don't have a living guide, someone that's guiding us who's living, is Prabhupada, and he's alive through his books and through his words. So in that sense, Prabhupada is instructing all of us in some way. And just even in the association of so many people at the temple, at different places, there's so many temples all over the world, and there's so many saintly people who live there, and they give guidance here and there. So it may not be formal guru acceptance, but there's some guidance coming from different sources in alignment with Srila Prabhupada's books. So it's important to cultivate those relationships where we can get guidance if we feel we don't have personalized guidance, but cultivate relationships, get mentors, and then eventually a spiritual guide, a guru will show up and come into our lives, and then give us more personal instruction. What I found is that generally when we have a sincere desire to receive spiritual knowledge, Krishna within the heart, he will send a guru to us. And it's actually confirmed in Chaitanya Charitamrita that there's that Krishna is actually bestowing the guru on us, and the guru is giving us our devotional service to Krishna. So it's like a circle. Is that okay? You have more? Okay. Anything else that anybody? Yes?
I just wanted to say my name is Guru.
That's brilliant. Your name is Guru. Wow, what a nice name. Yeah, that's a good question, because we see in Bhagavad-gita, the whole Bhagavad-gita is basically conversation between guru and disciple. It's highlighting the importance of having spiritual guidance, because later in this chapter, Arjuna is going to be totally bewildered about what he's meant to do. And then we see him taking guidance from Krishna, agreeing to become his disciple, and then Krishna starts instructing him and giving him all kinds of good advice pertaining to him. That's an interesting point, that the guru will give you advice that is suitable for you. Others may look at this book and say, why is Krishna telling Arjuna to fight? Shouldn't it be peaceful? How is war? How can that be religious? For us to start a war, it wouldn't be considered religious. But for Arjuna, this is actually the right thing for him to do according to his nature, because he is a warrior by duty. That's his inherent nature, and therefore he's meant to act according to his nature. If he chose the path of just meditating in the mountains or not fighting, that would actually be almost like sinful for him, because he's going against what his nature is and against what Krishna is telling him to do. So it wouldn't fulfill him, it wouldn't satisfy him, and it wouldn't be the right way for him to serve Krishna. The right way for him as a warrior is to actually fight, because that's his nature. And it said that if we don't follow our nature and what we're meant to do, when following our duty, we're going to do our nature in some other way at an inappropriate time. So if his nature is to fight, and he's not choosing to fight for Krishna, then at some point he's going to fight, but in the wrong way. So rather engage your nature in service to Krishna. When Krishna is telling you, engage your nature, fight in this way, then you can actually get eternal spiritual benefit from engaging your nature, as opposed to doing it in some other way at the wrong time. Because our nature will come out. Anything else?
Sometimes they say like in your answers, so that when you're talking to someone, you say, I cannot give you the answers, you have to find your own. But then if the mind is too strong, and then how do you know what's there actually? It's not just your mind distracted. It's very often it's like, the mind is always trying to distract, not to service.
Wow, that's a powerful question. When you say that, sometimes they say you have to find your own answers. That would that be like related to like a personalized, circumstantial question about your life? Like maybe if you ask them, should I get a job, or should I not have a job, or should I be in this country, or should I be in that country? Those kinds of questions. Yeah, it's interesting, because like the guru is also not like a fortune teller, They don't know like certain material circumstances, which may be considered almost insignificant for our spiritual life. They're not necessarily going to get involved in, and they may not know what's the best material circumstance for us. They know what's the best devotional circumstance and how we can use our nature in devotional service. But they may not know where you should live, whether you should be married or unmarried, or whether you should be working or not working, or living in a temple or living outside. I know my spiritual master, when people would ask him these kinds of questions, they say, should I get married? He'd say, yes. And they say, should I not get married? He'd say, yes. Should I live here? He'd say yes. Should I live there? He'd say yes. Because he's highlighting the point that it's actually an insignificant consideration. Because the highest thing is to serve Krishna using our inherent abilities. And those considerations are material. Like wherever we are situated, we should be serving Krishna. So unless we're in a situation where it's impossible to serve Krishna in one place and it's possible in another place, then they'll tell you, go here, because it's possible there. Or it's impossible to do it while you're working because you have a job that's taking up 24 hours of your time. Then they'll actually tell you, no, maybe you shouldn't work. Then they get involved when it's about your spiritual life and your spiritual practice. Otherwise, if it's either or, like you'd still be a devotee either way, it would probably be insignificant consideration. Like they wouldn't necessarily know or want to advise on that situation. Hmm? How can I serve? How can I serve you? Yeah, that's the main question to ask, actually. Srila Prabhupada also, that was his only consideration when speaking to his spiritual masters. How can I serve? And that's the mood of the disciple. The only consideration is how can I serve you? In those questions and those conversations, then other things may come up, but it's based around service. It's based around how am I able to serve you? How can I serve Krishna the best? Then they may guide you, okay, be in this situation or be in that situation, so for the purpose of serving. Yeah. Anything else from anybody?
What about the mind distinction, like when the mind tries to guide?
It depends. Is the mind purified?
No, I mean, obviously when we think about purified, trying to distract you, and you think, oh, that sounds like a good idea, but actually you end up, oh my god, I missed the program because I heard my mind.
Don't miss programs because of your mind. That's the biggest takeaway. If your mind is directing you to miss a program in some way, don't listen. Go to the program. Always go to the temple program. Yeah, that's why we try not to listen to our mind, actually. We try to listen to senior, higher guidance, just devotee association, guru, sadhu, shastra, just something else, but not our mind. Because usually our mind is going to be wrong. That's like the default you can expect from the mind is it's going to be wrong. Sometimes we cannot help it. We make a mistake. But still, the point is when we deviate because we listen to the mind, get back on track. That's the main advice.
Mind should be controlled somehow. Somehow there was a description on Bhagavad-gita, I think, how to control the mind.
There is in the 6th chapter.
Oh, yes.
There is in 6th chapter Bhagavad-gita, Krishna gives very detailed instruction on how to control the mind. And Arjuna rightly says, controlling the mind seems more difficult than controlling the wind, because he couldn't follow that process. Because it's a different process, different for a different time. But actually, we know that from Prabhupada and from what he's given us and from the purports, that actually in this age, the greatest way to control the mind is by chanting the holy name, the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, because that's the Yuga Dharma. That's the process for this age that's meant to bring self-realization. That's going to give, not just control the mind, but actually give us pure love of God. So that's one way. If you're always chanting, then someday the mind will get purified and be controlled. Yeah, that's so true. Cooperation, as Prabhupada said, cooperation was so important to him. And Srila Prabhupada said, your love for me will be shown by how well you cooperate with each other. And we have this example that Prabhupada is this perfect leader that we have in our society. And when the devotees cooperated, they could do things that seemed impossible. And that's why Prabhupada said, impossible is only a word in a fool's dictionary, because they did the impossible by spreading Krishna consciousness, not just in New York, which is the hub of sin in the world, but not just in San Francisco, not just in Montreal, but then coming here to London and meeting the Beatles, which seemed like an impossible task. And they had that desire, like, we want to meet the Beatles, because there's nobody bigger in the world than the Beatles at that time. And they actually did it. They joined forces. And that's how we have this amazing property, because of that connection, because of them meeting the Beatles and contributing spiritually to the Beatles. And then George Harrison did so much for Krishna. He got this place for the devotees. He recorded so many songs. So through that cooperation and following a saintly leader, you can do impossible things. And something I was reflecting on from Bhutta Bhavana Prabhu's class was how when a leader is qualified, everybody will naturally want to follow them. When a leader is saintly, then everybody is very eager to follow them. And we see this from the scripture, like kings like Yudhishthir, Parikshit Maharaj, and Maharaj Prithu. So many kings where when they had to leave in some way, the citizens were devastated because they felt so protected and loved by the leader, and therefore they gave their full support. And comparing it to modern times where we don't have qualified leaders, and therefore nobody wants to follow the leader because the leader is not qualified. And then there's like dissension, and the leader expects full surrender and full support, but they're not giving the protection to the people. So it's all backward in this day and age. And that's why we look at the world and we see like devastation. Every country has some problem or the other because of the leadership. If everybody was like Grandfather Bhishma and Yudhishthir, how different the world would be. That's true. Devotees would make the best leaders of society because they have moral principles. They're following the principles of scripture, and they're essentially, we know in scripture the government follows the Brahmins. The Brahmins are the heads, and they instruct the Kshatriyas, the warriors, the government in how to lead. So that's how Vedic society works. So that means in Krishna consciousness, when we have leaders, they would naturally follow the scripture, and that's why they'd be perfect leaders. But yeah, in modern times, we don't have that everywhere. It will be very rare to have a Krishna conscious leader, but we're all hoping in the future. If there's nothing else, we can end here. Hare Krishna, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad-gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Premanande Haribo.